this episode of the Growth Catalyst podcast, I'm having one of my usual catch-ups with Matt Roberts, co-founder. We talked about optimization of organizations. So organizations that are trying to get things done, they're optimizing two things: the choices, so what they're focusing on, and time, so how much work actually gets done. Matt bandied around some quite scary figures. So he says that most teams operate at somewhere between 12 and 25% of their potential capacity because they're so distracted with organizational other stuff, meetings, emails, context switching. So deep work is actually just averaging a few hours a week per knowledge worker, which is, when you start to scale that up, the figures become really quite frightening, but I'll let Matt share that information. Good culture breeds accountability, transparency, autonomy, and growth for both the people and the business. I hope you enjoy this.
Hi, back with you again today, Matt. How are you?
I am good, thank you. Preparing for a busy week of workshops. We're in good shape.
Good. So today we're going to focus on teams. We'll start with teams. You obviously work with a lot of teams. So what's the difference between a high-performing team and those that are performing less well?
High-performing teams, and that's one of the phrases like 1 or 2 years ago you never really heard as a phrase. It now crops up a lot, and I think a lot of that is to do with obviously education, research, like Google's Project Aristotle has become more widely spread and well known. It's becoming part of the lexicon of management. I think what's important to realize when we're talking about teams or high performing teams, it's ultimately these groups of people that create the advantage that we're all looking for. So perhaps the kind of good way to approach what makes a high performing team is to look at what stops teams from performing. And if we're thinking about performance as defined by what? So, wouldn't surprise anyone listening who's heard other things that we've created is, for us, the essence of high performance is it's rooted initially in strategy. So of course, high performance is closely associated with, are we making strategic progress? If we're making strategic progress, it's going to be through a vehicle like OKRs or another goal framework. They're going to have probably metrics in if we're doing it really well. And if we're thinking about teams that might have OKRs as well as metrics, sometimes they're called health metrics, that is going to really sort of define what success looks like. And what would it be really high performance, I guess. What is low performance and not performing so well? It's a team that obviously is part of an organization that is probably not growing, doesn't have a particular advantage, is a bit me too. Maybe it's one or many teams within an organization that are not performing. And then the question as to what are the most common reasons perhaps underperforming versus high performance then become really interesting. We see, because we're innately involved in goal setting, that the things that make goal progress less likely or often, slow or even non-existent is that teams often have conflicting priorities. If you are requiring a goal to be achieved, yet you are also requiring on cross-functional collaboration, essentially you're making one team's priority another team's priority. And despite their best intentions, that becomes a challenge for many. And lots of these kind of, I need teams to coordinate and collaborate goals often struggle. Which is why when we're thinking about high performance and teams, we should also be thinking about organizational design. And one of the things that we would recommend in some instances is that you create these dedicated cross-functional teams that are often persistent. And the capability you need is to be able to stand them up, know when I need a dedicated cross-functional team or near dedicated, and when you've achieved whatever you need to achieve, if they're not going to persist, the ability to stand them down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think, if 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 that's very rational and that's planning based, then the other thing that we should really consider in terms of high performance is culture, in particularly attributes like psychological safety that I know we talk about. Because ultimately, it's your culture that will deliver high performance, not necessarily just setting the goal. And we know what psychological safety is in terms of a term that Amy Edmondson sort of originated. And I know it appears on lots of calls, and we talk about it. The whole world's talking about it, but actually, there's a really big gap between knowing what it is and being able to actually do something about it. I don't know whether you're doing the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a phrase that is talked about a lot. What does it mean to you?
For simple definition, it's when a team is able to contribute their ideas, probably unique perspectives, in a group setting where they can be challenging where needed. And even if there's really senior people in that room with better or bigger hierarchy, more status, more tenure, they are not going to alter their behavior. They feel really safe to really challenge, describe what they're believing, why, without fear of repercussions. And I've worked with some really old school leadership teams where those sort of hippo voices that carried weight were in the room and everybody else was quiet. And it probably won't surprise you that these organizations also indexed poorly or lowly in terms of attributes like innovation. And then ironically, they were also stuck in this kind of incremental low growth loop. And these things also then become self-fulfilling. It's not a surprise. You're really not leveraging all of that capability, that creativity, that kind of shared experiences that, not just from the ones that are shaped within the company you're currently at, but, you employ people because they come with, a bag of experience too. And it's really about leveraging all of those. So yeah, when you get it going and when it works, it really works.
And as a coach, I work with a lot of leaders who talk about psychological safety, that they want to really help further deepen the culture of psychological safety, but then they're very assumptive on how their teams behave and how they are interacting with their teams and how they're leading their teams. It's fascinating. So what's the impact of bad psychological safety on a company, on shareholders, on those teams, those employees?
Take a step back and go, what are we trying to do here? And at a meta level, as an organization, we're trying to do two things. The first is optimize choices. Strategy is a set of well thought out, very deliberate, well articulated choices, very explicit in what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. OKRs are the same. You unpack a wide, broad spectrum of things that we could do, and we narrow it down to a few things that we're going to commit to with clear outcomes. If you're using initiatives, tasks, activities, that kind of executional layer, experiments, they are the same. They are explicit choices about what we're going to do. This is very rational. It's very data driven. We're potentially investing or kind of trying to unlock creativity as well, and any unconventional or maybe not data driven thoughts. It's that cocktail that makes good plans happen. So on one hand, kind of very left brain, right brain, we're kind of optimizing choices. We're trying to build behaviors. But the other attribute that we really are acutely aware of and we're trying to optimize all the time is time. We're amazed by how much time gets wasted. So how many hours per year, for example, are worked by 100-person org, 1,000-person org, a 5,000-person org? Actually, if you take into account vacation and the holidays, for the 100-person org, it's like 200,000. For the 1,000-person org, it's 2 million. And for the 5,000-person org, it's 10 million hours per year. When you start to dig into that and go, how many hours are actually being worked outside meetings, away from distractions, or in that flow state, that place where you just get lots of stuff done. You're unaware of time. You know, there was a meeting, you're probably going to arrive late because you were, you know, you're just in that presentation or writing that document or whatever you're doing. And the research suggests the answer is unbelievably, potentially shockingly low. So actually we're doing between 5 and 15 hours per week of deep work if you're a knowledge worker. So, you know, that's time lost to meetings, email, Slack, administration, context switching is a really big one. So those same orgs, the 100,000, 5,000 person orgs, you're actually not doing as much output value generating work as you think. You know, so for example, the 100 person orgs only sort of doing 500 to 1,500. So you're roughly working on 12 to 25% of your theoretical capacity. Wow. So when you acknowledge that, that changes everything you do. You know, not only we're trying to create these sort of points of focus strategically, metric-wise, OKRs, executional experiments, etc. We're also trying to optimize time, because only the application of time to those goals that are actually going to drive the progress that you want. So we end up focusing a lot of our attention on two levers. Obviously, strategy, OKRs, and executional decisions are all about optimizing choice. And the other is time. Optimizing time is about optimizing how teams increase the time available to drive work and the progress that matters.
So how do you do that?
So we're involved in training, both remote, in-person, workshop orientated seminars, etc., that are building capabilities. So that's one thing we do. Part of that is then how do we extend that to improving processes, embedding rituals at work, and really get involved in the kind of the day-to-day working practices that are initially different to making them just what we do here.
Okay, so what's the impact on an organization then?
So if you take that 100,000 and then 5,000 person org kind of scenario, if you can increase focus time by as little as 20%, which is easily doable, and we see that frequently, that's the equivalent of an extra 20 employees for the 100 person org, and for the 5,000 person org, that's 1,000 additional employees.
Wow. So if you were to put some figures on that, what's the financial lens?
Good question. It depends on the average salary. So let's just go for a fully loaded cost of maybe 75 to 100K. That 100 person org is kind of in the realms of 1.5 to 2 million in capacity value. 1,000 person org, obviously a multiple of that, 15 to 20 million.
Oh, wow, that's massive.
Also worth, massive, and no recruitment costs, no onboarding time, no extra office space, no management overhead.
Wow. Wow, that's huge. So the secret sauce here?
Not very secret, is it? Optimize choices and employee time, and you're probably going to do well. Who does that impact? Customers. You know, we want them to get the best products they can, which means that you're going to have to really understand how to create that value. Your teams are going to then have to go away and build it. You want employees to experience a growing company. When you're involved in a growing company, you yourself can grow. You can get promoted, you can get pay rises. There's learning and development budget, to name but a few things. And you know, if we care about employees and customers and how they're succeeding, shareholders get their return.
So good culture really does mean that people work harder because they want to.
Yeah, success breeds success.
Wow. Well, time is up. Thank you very much, Matt. That's fascinating.
My pleasure.
Speak soon.